I've read and listened to a few of your interviews as well, and you became a mom very young.
Yeah.
That
Depends.
was
I mean,
age,
I don't know. I don't think 23 is
not
not.
very young, but
Yeah.
I mean, how can I say? Because because you're 30 now, I'm 33.
Mhm.
So you are the 89, 90,
I'm 90. So yeah, I'm a
90.
90
So
baby.
I
Yeah.
think I don't know. I just think of this new generation as being like having kids later
Oh, for sure.
for some reason. So
Yes,
for me, it's like really early. 23 is
I would
like.
agree. I laugh. I laugh at, like you had a kid so young. My mom had me when she was 20. Um,
Mhm.
and my mom basically ran away with my dad after knowing him for like maybe a year and married him when she was 18, like barely 18. Um,
Wow.
so I don't know. I kind of grew up in a household where my parents, they got married quite young and they had us quite young. My mom's passion was just to have kids. That's all she wanted. That was not my passion. That wasn't something I ever thought about. I was a competitive athlete. I didn't intend on having kids as early as I did. But I did get married to my husband when I was 19. I had known him for a very long time. He lived with us for a little while, but we weren't dating. Then we started dating. We were 16. And he's just, an amazing individual. And we just, as a growing up around him and knowing him, you couldn't meet a better guy. So I was
Mhm.
really lucky that I had that experience with him, because otherwise there's no way I would have children now. Family is so important to us. And I was very grateful for my parents. They were young enough that I got to see what they were really passionate about, like
Mhm.
they weren't pursuing what they wanted to do. And then when they feel like they've made it through that, then they were going to have kids. They kind of wanted to lump it all together, like. And for me, that was like really inspirational to watch, because not a lot of people do that. And then I think children often miss out on seeing that like fire in their parents' eyes of like getting through things. And while that can still happen at a later age, more and more so, I think in our 20s, we have that like, we haven't made as many mistakes yet. So we're just like, I can do anything, and then when I was maybe 22, I guess, I wasn't anticipating getting pregnant, and I did. And then I miscarried. And after I miscarried, I was like, man, I didn't think I'd be that upset. Like I'm really upset that, that this didn't work out, because I was really excited. Um,
Mhm.
and then I had a terrible doctor. There's like a million things wrong with the whole scenario. And the doctor was like, oh, well, you can't get pregnant for a little while, like probably a couple months. Your body has to recover and
Mhm.
heal. And I was like, okay. And then 2 weeks later, I was pregnant with my son. And I was like,
Oh wow.
how does that work? I didn't even think, you told me this couldn't happen. And it was like beyond a blessing. My son's like a mini version of me. He's like 100% me in a male form. He's 7 years old now. And yeah, I didn't, like I said, it kind of, I'm really glad that everything happened the way it did, because I don't know that I would have initially made that decision. And I definitely
Mhm.
think that, you know, for me, as a competitive athlete and as a full-time employee and as a, like in everything that I'm doing, having the kids helps really, center me and help me prioritize, like how important is this, doing this, what's the best route for this? And instead of looking at it, from my own little box, and, it's much broader. So I've had the opportunity to have kind of a, broad focus on what I'm doing and the impacts of what I'm doing, from thinking about trying to be more green to everything I'm doing. It just gives me this much broader like idea of like, instead of thinking, a week from now, I'm thinking 5 years from now, looking back, how will this work? And I contribute that mostly to having my kids, because I am such a driven person. I get really caught up in the things that I'm doing. And my kids have really helped open the horizons for me big time.
Definitely.
So I definitely laugh, all my friends, I've been married for I think going on 12 years in
Mhm.
April, which is a long time. And especially all our friends, the first weddings were only like 2 years ago. So we were like the old couple at all of our, my husband was getting tired of being like his friend's wingman. He's like, I just don't know. I'm not really enjoying the wingman thing anymore. Uh, and then only 2 years ago, our first really close friends had a kid, and so it was really interesting watching that transition because I don't know, I just didn't realize that there would be such a big gap, between us getting married and having kids before everyone else, even in our social circle. It's not like I have a bunch of friends that had kids. Also, no one did. We were the ones with kids. And I also really like that because I got really creative on what I would do with my kids. They'd be like, oh, well, we're going to go do this, but I guess you can't because your son has to go to bed. I'm like, why does my son have to go to bed? Like, I don't know what you're talking about. Like, let's go have a bonfire and do this. And
Yeah.
my son, I'd bring a blanket and he'd sleep on the beach until 2 a.m. and we would all be, I definitely wouldn't, party hard, but I don't want to party hard anyways. As an athlete, I think feeling good is really important. So,
Mhm.
um, I would, still go out and enjoy being at the parties and being, 25. But it was really cool, to look over and see my son, having a really good sleep out under the stars while we're all,